Welcome to the AirCon Vault, recordings of the live streams from Airwiggle's audio conference. These are made free thanks to our sponsors, A Sound Effect, Game Audio Learning, Kilohertz, Audio Kinetic, Sound Cuts, Sugi, Boom Library, Sound Warriors, and Airwiggles, the online home for audio people.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another talk at AirCon24. Thank you so much, Greg and Louis, for hosting this. This is the second time this conference is happening, and I'm glad that the attendance has improved and increased this time. It just shows that there are a lot of people around the world who, if given the chance, would want to collaborate and participate in these kind of events, where people can share ideas on different topics within the audio domain, and also maybe share suggestions, ideas, feedbacks. Who knows? A lot can happen, right, when so many people come together. So I'm going to begin today's session, which is about, it's basically about the audio tech ecosystem. I use this word ecosystem a lot, at least over the past few years. And I think many of you would have noticed Apple using this initially. I think they claim how their products cohesively work really well. So if you have an iPhone, you can work and very smoothly with any other devices, for example, right? So that's the whole philosophy of that keyword, which became trending in the tech reviewers domain, I guess. If you watch any YouTube channels like MKBHD, you will hear a lot about that word, the ecosystem. Let me start today's session by sharing my screen and walking you through what I have in mind with respect to this fancy word, and we'll discuss more ideas. You can feel free to mention things in the comments, and yeah, let's get started. So. The first thing first, in case you have just joined the presentation, make sure to fill the form. The link is mentioned in the chat. For anybody who is watching this online, a recording of this, don't worry, there will be a QR code and a link mentioned in the next slides in a few minutes, so you can fill it then. Especially if you're watching it after this live event has closed, feel free to still fill the form because it gives me some more visibility into where the industry is moving. So let's begin with a quick introduction about me. So my name is Prashant, and these slides will be shared with you after the talk. So you can actually click on this hyperlink just to see how to pronounce my name correctly. So my name is Prashant, and I am listening. I have been using this introduction for a while now. I think that it actually reminds me what I'm doing in life, and also professionally. Like whatever I'm doing kind of eventually comes back to this fact that I'm listening. If I'm doing a sound design, if I'm doing a music composition, or even building products, eventually the way I relate to all of those entities is by listening. So I thought, okay, why not just make it the tagline? For those of you who are not aware of it yet, I work with a company called Soundly, which is the sound effects platform. I work there as a product development specialist. So my role is to basically figure out what's missing in the industry and try to fill the gap. Try to find ways to make the workflow of a sound designer as quick as possible. I will be touching about a few of this later in the slides because the audio tech domain kind of covers my current role as well. I also teach game audio to game design students at National Institute of Design in Bangalore. And the idea there is to basically help game designers to start thinking in game audio. I also help Leonard Paul with his School of Video Game Audio. I help keep the Discord side of things slightly active and also share as much information as I can find on the internet with respect to game audio, any new information that shows up, and so on. Recently, this year in January, I hosted the Auto Developer Conference ADCX India, which was done in Bangalore, and it was clubbed with Music Hack Day India. I will talk a little bit more about that in the later slides. And besides that, I am building another community of audio tech folks, which is called the Music Tech community. Yeah, feel free to join that as well. And I'm also along with that, building Game Audio India with more folks who are also in the domain of game audio and want ecosystem to develop in India itself. In the past, I have worked with some other brands as well. So, like for example, I worked with the Disney Publishing Worldwide, where my role was to figure out how can we make sound design specific to Disney IPs for educational games and videos. I also helped Tim Nielsen with the website of UCS. If you are not aware of UCS yet, I would highly recommend go check out universalcategorysystem.com, because it is basically the solution that helps you name your files, especially the sound library files, as smoothly as possible, so it becomes easy for you to search in the future and also to like sell it to other people. I've also worked with a brand called Touch Talent, which does not, I think that company does not exist anymore, but that was a fun experience, and a little bit on Osmo and Epic. Right, so this was a quick introduction about me. I would want to know a little bit about you, just to get to understand what backgrounds you come in, and what specific roles you are doing on a professional level. So feel free to fill the form if you haven't already. The URL is prashantmishra.xyz/aircon24/poll. This URL is also available in the chat here on AirWiggles. I'll actually mention that URL again, just in case you're unable to find that. And if you're using another device, you can always scan the QR and fill the form there. So let me just take a minute to fill. So majority of people who have joined today in the live session are sound designers. For those of you who are watching this as a recording, again, the poll results will change. And I'm really hopeful that more developers, more music composers would also watch this video. And the result that I'm seeing in the poll would also be more proportionate in that way. A lot of you have ranted about audio products. Yes, we are almost all on the same page. One question that I specifically have is, have you collaborated with a developer in any project, whether professional or as a hobby? And I'm glad to see like there is a good number of people who have said yes, while there are also a lot of people who have said no. I think it's completely okay. Hopefully that will change after this conversation that we are going to have here. But good to know that there are already people who are actually putting the effort and who have some experience in ideating with a developer. Right. Feel free to also use the chat, by the way, in AirWiggles here, just in case you want to tell me something which is not already asked in the form. Like maybe what's your favorite sound? That's the question I asked in my previous year's talk, or anything else that will help me basically. So let me move forward. Just a quick note that before we begin, to make the best use of like today's talk, I would recommend you to take notes. I will go slow, so there's no hurry. So make sure to take notes and pointers. There will be some goodies I will share towards the end of the talk, which I kind of always try to do. And if you have any questions, you will notice that there is a specific pinned comment in the thread that Greg has created. So you can go ahead and mention your questions there. That way, after I'm done with the talk, I can just go through the questions and answer you once everything else is wrapped up. So just a quick, quick note on how you can make the best use of today's conversation. So the important question for us to understand, which I feel is very, very important in any learning, is basically why even bother to discuss this whole idea of the audio tech ecosystem. The second thing is it's also important to understand what is an ecosystem is. So I will try and give you an overview of, in my point of view, what an ecosystem means. I'll also, while I'm talking about that, I will mention some steps that I have already explored, and maybe you can take some insights from that. And then we'll get to the next steps. What else can we do to upskill and upgrade the audio industry? So the first question, of course, is why even bother? Why did I even decide to make a talk on this specific topic? And the straightforward answer is that I have been there. I have been in a situation where I did not have people who could guide me or who could tell me, hey, this is where you can learn this part of audio tech. Forget audio tech, even when it comes to music composition. I am based in India, and when I started out in music and sound design, it was not very clear what the steps are. What specifically do you learn to be able to get better at something? So, because I know what it feels like to not have people supporting you around you, or find relevant folks who you can ask the right questions, I felt that okay, maybe it's time that we start these conversations slightly more than what has already happened so far, so that maybe somebody else who wants to get into audio tech or in the audio industry in general will actually have some more visibility. The other thing is self learning is fun, and I think self learning is one of the strongest way we actually learn something properly. But often it can take a lot of time, especially because you might not have the right resources. Because maybe some you did a research for 1 week and then you came to know about, hey, this is how something is done. On the other hand, if there was a support system, all you had to do is ask a question and you'll get a response. For example, Airwiggles is a great example of how anything you have to know about game audio or sound design or music, you just ask a question and you will definitely find somebody who has the right answer, or at least the right direction that they can point you towards, right? So that's another way. How can we do it more for the audio tech domain? And again, the idea is to hit the bullseye rather than beating around the bush, not spending too much time imagining stuff, but rather actually making something happen. And something that I have to talk about, which I also mentioned in the poll form that you all filled, is this: the current behavior of most creatives. And I will include myself in that as well. So this is how we actually like do stuff these days. The first thing is giving feedback to any product companies, maybe a dog creator. Yeah, it's fun. Participating in user surveys. There are many times when the companies who make DAWs, for example, would send out emails, hey, we want to hear your thoughts, give us opinions. Yeah, that is fun as well. But ranting on social media, yes, nothing beats that. And even better, why not make memes about it? So again, there is nothing wrong with any of those things that happen. I just want to put forward the current reality of how we as creatives behave more often than not. And I'm pretty sure like a lot of people would agree with that. So feel free to respond in the comments, just so that I am aware that this is not an assumption that I have. And especially seeing the poll results, I don't think it's an assumption. I can see people who have ranted about this. Right. Again, we'll get back to this in a few slides. It's always like a Nolan movie, right? So yeah, let me just define an ecosystem, because that's the first step. So I think an ecosystem of any industry is, or especially the audio industry, has four major aspects, and there's no particular order of it, but I'll just mention it. So one is users, the other is the industry, then there is a research domain, and then there is education. So, what do I mean when I talk about users? So, users could be actually anybody, any creative folk or artist who basically has an idea that they want to present. Imagine like a guitar player who wants to express their emotion through a specific song that they want to write. That's the user base. Or imagine a sound designer who wants to create something that when you listen to it, you just feel bliss, or you feel much more connected to the visuals. So these are examples of users. This could also be like what the users use could not just be software, it could also be hardware, for example, synthesizers. So the user is the artist and the product is basically the synthesizer. It could also be an artist who wants to express more than what the tools currently allow. For example, maybe the artist wants more control on the synthesizer. Maybe the artist wants their MIDI to have slightly more options. So maybe they want the MPE option and MIDI 2.0 develops out of it. Or there could be, for example, users and artists who want to explore different ways of expressing themselves. Maybe they don't want to play the guitar. Maybe they don't want to use a DAW or a plugin to make music, but rather they just want to use their hand gestures. And they want a way that whatever I feel, I want to perform physically, and that should somehow translate into sound. So there are many examples of what a user is. In essence, though, it's basically an artist, a person, a human being who wants to express their ideas in some format. Now let's talk about the industry. What do I mean when I say the word industry? Is the people who make the product. So in the example of the guitar player, if that is the artist, the industry would basically be the maker of the guitar. It could be, for example, the artist might have questions like, I like to play this guitar, but I don't think that the body of the guitar is good enough. Like I want a different shape. I want more number of strings. I want a way to be able to, say, for example, bend the note more than what the current instruments allows me to. And basically, these are different ways that the industry, the product creators would basically make something for that artist. The other example of that, not from the audio world, would be, say, an artist who draws something. And in that case, the product creator might be making pencils, right? So the pencil creator actually then becomes the industry. So I have this quote, which I think has become more and more meaningful to me as I have explored further, which is the industry drives the genre and style of music as much as the artists do. And it is not just music, actually, it's also sound design, it's also the performance. And I'll give you an example of Daft Punk. If you like any electronic music that has arpeggiation happening, or there are any synthesizer sounds, you might relate to that music a lot emotionally. But I think it's important to also realize that it was the industry that made that tool in the first place. And here is another fun fact. Whatever options that were exposed to the artist in the synthesizer are also decided by the industry, right? Yes, there is cutoff knob, there is LFOs, and there are a bunch of other parameters that you can actually control with your hand, and you can make movements and all that. But it was the industry that defined those parameters. It decided, okay, I'm going to solder a bunch of these things in the electronics, and I'm going to expose one of those elements to the end user. And then many artists showed up, they filled it with it, and they ended up creating their own genres and their own style of music. And I want you to hold on that thought because I will be touching upon this later as well. Again, just to summarize this point, what I'm saying is that the industry, the people who create tools, can often define the way artists express themselves. At the end of the day, yes, it's the artist who will express, but it will basically be it. The industry also plays a very important role in defining how that specific tool is going to be. What interactions will it allow the user? So now I'll just quickly talk about what steps I have explored in the industry in terms of building the audio tech ecosystem. First things first, if I have come across a new startup in the audio domain that is doing something nice, I have just shamelessly promoted them. I have not seen what their who their investor is or what they do or who they are. All I have seen is that they have a product that has a potential, and I would just promote that. So I think that's one way that you can actually build an ecosystem. You help and you give shout outs to any idea that you find valuable. If you notice something that has a potential to change your workflow in the future, maybe it's not doing it right now, but maybe in the future it will, promote that. The other thing that I have done in terms of this industry side of the ecosystem is help companies find the right talents. I have met a lot of people who are, say, for example, developers, but they are very keen into listening music and creating music, and they have new ideas the way it can be done. So I have tried and connect them with the right industry because I'm aware of which company is kind of looking for what kind of talent, and that way I'm able to bridge that gap between the person who has the skill and the company that needs the skill. The other thing that I have done so far is help and given feedback on the marketing strategies. So there are a lot of companies who have some really, really good products. I'll name some as we move forward, but I have noticed that they have not reached their end user. Actually, I'll give you an example right now of a company called DVC Mate. They have this MIDI plugin that can actually, you just have to play a melody and it will transform that melody into chords, which actually work really good for orchestration. And I have noticed that they have still not reached their end user. And it's just a marvelous idea. And I think if you just check it out and like after this talk, you'll actually see the potential of it. So just like small bits of any new company that shows up that has a good idea, just help promote them. The other way that I have the steps that I have taken so far with respect to helping the industry is by becoming beta testers. And I'm not sure how many of you do beta testing for any company, just like mentioned in the chat. But if you don't already, just sign up. There is actually no reward that you get. There's no monetary benefit. It's basically the companies giving you the software just before their launch, and so that you can test if it is breaking or if it is crashing. But the way I have used that process is I end up giving more feedback than just bug reports. So if I come across a new DAW, for example, that's going to release a new version out there, I would test it and I will see what exactly is it that it can be made better, or just a feedback of whether or not I like that specific feature, because that also in a way gives them a confidence that yes, whatever we have planned is actually working out in the industry. So that's another way that you can do it. Become beta testers for companies. I would highly recommend looking for new companies, because there are often just two or three developers in that company who might benefit a lot from your point of view as a creator, because eventually most of you are the end users. You are the ones who make music, who do the sound design. So your opinion is very strong. So that's another thing that I have explored in the past. The other example I can give you about what I have explored in the industry in the sense of collaboration with developers is basically getting sitting with the game developer and figuring out how can we automate animation. I had given a talk about this on the Audio Programmers channel. That video is available on my website. I'll also make sure to mention all of those things in the final summary page that I will make on my website for this talk. But again, there the idea was, if I have a voiceover track and I have a text file, how can I sync them up together, and then how can I animate that thing in Unity? And this whole thing was not done just by me alone. I had collaborated with the game developers to figure out the best possible solution. I had worked with some machine learning experts to find out what the tools can be, and then build that. So there's just some examples of how, if you are collaborating with an industry, things can actually work in your favor. The other part, so I have covered two topics so far. So the industry is about the users, the industry, and then the third part of the ecosystem is the research. Now, by research, what I mean is there are two types of research, in my opinion. One is application based research, and the other thing is research for the fun of it. So, for example, let's say we are talking about application independent research. It might be somebody who is analyzing a lot of voiceover files and trying to remove noise from it. It might be a student that is who decided to just take that up as a master's project. Now they are doing it without any specific industry outcome. They're just doing it for the fun of it, or probably just to write a thesis about it. But maybe few years down the line, the industry might realize a good use case out of it. They might realize that on-site recording can often be a lot noisy, and those tools can actually be used to make a product that can ease the lives of many voice editors who day in and day out actually have to edit voiceovers, expose themselves to a lot of noise, which can get annoying. And instead of them focusing on removing the noise, they can finally focus on getting the pace and the rhythm of the voice better. So it's basically a research which might have started without an end goal, without an application area in mind, by some student maybe 5 years ago. And today we are actually seeing the result of it. So those are basically ways you can actually enable the audio tech ecosystem to grow, meaning allowing people to do some research without worrying about it. Another example I can give you about this is basically music instruments. Now I know we all use MIDI controllers. We know different type of instruments that we have, but are you aware that the MIT Media Lab is actually creating a lot of tools which allow you to make music differently? There are synthesizers which are based on cloth, for example. So you can just touch the cloth and it gives you a MIDI note. There are people who are actually exploring ways with, like I told about, like the hand gestures. You do some gestures and the music note is created. So again, these are research which with no specific product in mind, but it's just being done to explore more ways that artists, the users, can express themselves. So maybe talking about these things can also help grow the industry. Maybe if now that I have talked about this in this talk, maybe some of you will be curious to know more about it. Maybe you will go to their website or send an email and let them know that, hey, I'm happy to beta test it, or I'm happy to give opinions on it as an artist, as an end user. There are also scenarios where the research is application based. For example, it could be things like I know what I'm trying to solve as a sound designer, as a musician, and then I reach out to a company and then they make a solution for it. Or if you're working in game audio, this happens almost every day, which is, let's say you're using a specific game engine or a middleware and you want to just slightly tweak what it can do. You want to basically extend its strengths, and then you basically collaborate with a developer and you do maybe like a week long research. And if you are able to make a feature out of it, it enables your game to do more than what it was already doing. Now, a lot of companies already have this as a culture, and I think like more people should do it. The other way you can do these kind of collaboration and research, and you can help that ecosystem is by joining hackathons. And I'll touch upon this a little bit as well in my later slides. Right. So there is another way that research can actually help, which is basically on existing products. So you might, for example, have an audio product which has many users, and the company might reach out to you for a feedback. For example, Audio Kinetic just reached out to a few people who to get their feedback on their new UI for Voice, the next version of Voice. And it's really good to see that companies value the time and effort of their users, because if they make a decision in the design right now, it can actually ease the life of many people down the line. So there are companies that actually do a lot of time and spend a lot of time in product research. They actually connect with the users. The other recent example I can give about is my company Soundly. So we recently released a new version of Soundly, and it was basically driven by a lot of feedback that we have received over the years. One of the feedback that from the users was when I'm searching for a sound in Soundly and I close the Soundly app, or if I want to search something else alongside, I cannot do it right now. And that led to the decision of making tabs feature. So now you basically search for a sound, and at the same time, if you want to search for something else, you open a new tab and you search without getting rid of anything. We shipped this version of the product, and within a few weeks we got some more feedback that, hey, can we recall those tabs that we closed when we closed Soundly? And then we ended up making another feature that, hey, now if you basically close the Soundly when those tabs were open and you reopen Soundly, you can actually recall those tabs. So it's basically a very seamless workflow. Now you can actually be doing your work and then close the application, go do something else, and then when you come back, you're exactly where you started. So this is another example of how user-based research actually works. So I feel that in the audio tech industry, in the audio industry in large, a lot of growth will happen when this culture actually becomes the new normal. So it's not like I have a product, you have the money, give me the money and take the product and just use whatever I'm giving you. That's not the philosophy here. The philosophy is, hey, I have something that I find useful, maybe you will find useful as well, and then I give it to you. And then after using it for some time, you realize, yep, this helps me a lot. And then you have additional information on it that can make it better. And then you come back to me and I'm like, yes, that's a good idea. Let's actually make it better. And that's basically a two-way conversation. It allows the industry and all the products around the industry to actually work in the favor of the users. So that's another example of how research can actually help a lot. The last thing about the ecosystem is basically education. Now, education, I think, is a very important element. And in the creative industry in specific, education has always followed the actual thing. Like, for example, the films happened before the film school came into action. Sound design happened before the sound engineering or sound design schools came into action. So I think even in the audio tech domain, or even this in this whole new world where there are a lot of products being developed, there will be schools and courses done now. This is a good time for doing it. So there could be things like mentorship programs where you can actually share your opinions with other people who are interested in this domain. There can be courses created which can be just hosted online and be given to everyone. There can be support systems created that, hey, I am learning this specific thing. Can you help me more in that? So all of those things basically are another example of how the audio industry can grow further. When you have an ecosystem that has education as a very important element. Something that I have done so far in this domain is basically nudging more people to start exploring like game audio middleware. I know many people who want to explore, for example, Wise and Fmod, and they used to start it and then get overwhelmed and then hold back. So I thought, okay, why not just do like a free conversation, and that might nudge a few people. And for over the last 2 or 3 years, I have been doing that every year. Once in a while, I'll just mention that, hey, I'm doing another like one-on-one session. If you're interested, just hop on. And in that whole conversation, I'm rarely teaching anything. All I'm doing is enabling those people to actually learn further and just do whatever they already had in mind, but were just not doing it for some reason. That's another way this can be made better as well. Maybe you are somebody who wants to explore machine learning because that kind of is bugging you for a while now. And maybe for some reason you're still holding back. So why not just take the next step and just explore it? So the often the I will also talk about like how you can actually make that happen easily, how you can connect with developers and communities that will enable this for you. But before I do that, let me just bring one more aspect of an ecosystem, which is indirect use cases. Now, the audio tech world primarily focuses on the artists, on the users who are directly related to the audio industry, the companies that will be making products for those folks, the research domain, which is also very much inclined towards direct use case of the audio industry, and the education system, which also eventually will be focusing on how to teach, say, making your own audio plugins or your own tools for voice and fmod and so on. But I've noticed that there is also a different type of use case of audio technology, which is sometimes in healthcare industry. There's a lot of research happening here. So I'll put this here just for you to search further, but just be aware that whatever we do can sometimes have far more benefits than what we imagine it to be. So I hope that this is making sense. I hope you are seeing a potential of why we need to have an ecosystem. Again, just to like summarize some of my points, we all as creatives spend too much time in being that first quadrant of the ecosystem, which is being users. We spend a lot of time just using the tools and making some stuff, but we rarely connect with the industry. We rarely connect and find people who are doing the research, or we not often give our inputs for the education side of things. Maybe like there are potential of cross collaboration here. Maybe you as a sound designer can actually go and have a conversation with somebody who is making a new feature in the game engine and let them know what your pain points are. Or you can go to a student who might be actually doing a research right now on generative AI, and you can actually share your opinion on that. You can mention your concerns. You can probably get to know the reality of it instead of just getting to know the hype side of it. And I think this, if these four elements start talking to each other further, the environment will be slightly more inclusive. Uh, just know one fact, which is slightly concerning, but I think it should be known, which is the people who make products, the people who make do the research in the audio domain are at least 80 to 90% non-musicians, non-sound designers. They are primarily engineers whose application area happen to be audio. So there is a huge gap between their understanding of what works creatively and what does not. And maybe if there are more cross collaboration, maybe if we do some kind of conversation with the developers in our teams, or we give feedback to different companies, maybe those tools will start working in our favor. And that brings me to some of the next steps. First thing that I would highly recommend is that, actually, before I jump to the next steps, let me just take a quick opinion on from everyone. So there are four elements of the ecosystem that I talked about: the industry, the end user, which is basically the creatives and the artists, the education side of things, and the research side of things. Do any of you feel there is anything else that actually makes up the ecosystem, that actually makes up the audio industry besides these four? I'm just going to take a minute to look into the chat. There are no correct answers, so feel free to mention whatever your opinion about this is. Just as a recap, this is what I'm referring to. So the users, the industry, the research, and the education. So those are the four elements that I think make up an ecosystem. But if they have any other elements that are not covered in this? The listeners, yes, exactly. The people, the audience that is going to actually benefit from this. That's a really good missing point for sure. Yeah. Anything else? Right, right, right. I think that's a good point that Shankar has made. The audience who is going to listen to what we make. Right. So let me come to the next steps of what exactly can be done from our end to bridge the gap between the creatives and the industry and the research and the education and so on. First thing is, I think we need to understand the company's point of view. Like I said, there are the companies who are making tools for audio are primarily engineers, are primarily developers, machine learning experts. They don't really have, or they might not really have the creative background. Although like writing code is also a creative work in a way, but not, I'm talking about in terms of sound design or the music composition. Maybe they are not the ones who have to day in and day out go through what you have to go through. They never have to worry about when your system crashes or when your project crashes and whatever lot effort that you had done just vanishes. Because in the software world you have version control, which is far more better than the audio world. But maybe if you start giving feedback, you need to also understand what the company's point of view is. I will also mention, because I have witnessed a lot of it from the other side, is that many times the companies will send out survey forms to understand the users better, to understand the requirements better, but not everybody fills the form. So maybe starting today, we start filling the form. Maybe we actually start giving back our opinion if we have some ideas. Maybe because that would be a better place to do that rather than ranting after the feature is out. So understanding company's point of view, the industry point of view can actually help us a lot. The other thing that I will mention everyone to do as an exercise is start documenting your ideas and sharing them. Now you can make some things like, I wish this application could do this. I wish there was this possibility in this system. And that way, when you have the ideas documented, when the time is right, you can actually share it with the industry. For example, let's say the person who's playing the guitar, that person also might have come across many situations where they want to do more than what their guitar is allowing them to do. And if they have those ideas in mind, they can go to the person who's making the guitar and tell them, hey, can you change this part in the shape of the guitar? Can you add one more string for me? Can you add a different kind of pickup? This pickup is giving me a lot of high frequency content, and so on and so forth, right? So the conversation will begin only if you actually document your ideas. And I'm pretty sure everybody who is watching this talk right now, or who is going to watch this talk as a recording of it, you have at some point in your lives come across an idea because you were facing a problem. And this is something that is a gold mine. Not companies don't actually have visibility into what you're facing. So maybe if you start making a document, that will help a lot. Now, the reason I'm mentioning sharing ideas has two sides of it. Now, you might think that, okay, if I have an idea, why should I share it? Shouldn't I just make the product myself and get a new revenue stream? And the answer is yes. If you have the skills, or if you have people who can help you convert your idea into product, definitely go ahead with that. But my argument is that in your lifetime, it will be difficult to actually convert all of your ideas into products. I'm pretty sure you have more number of ideas than the time that is available to actually make something out of it. And that's where sharing that helps a lot, because maybe what you are looking for is something that somebody else actually wanted as a solution. And over the years, I have also come to realize that somebody somewhere is already working on the idea that you just had. There have been countless number of occasions where I come up with something which in my head is just mind blowing, and I Google search it and I'm like, oh, there is somebody already doing it right now, or somebody who has already done it in the past. So again, if you share ideas openly on platforms like say Airwiggles, maybe you will get a comment saying that, hey, that's a really good idea. I know of one plugin or one DAW which can actually do it. Maybe why not give it a try? And then you as a user will end up giving that a try. And then you'll be like, yep, this is close to what I want, but this can be made better. And then you might find ways to reach out to anyone in that specific company, give your feedback, and that whole process of what just happened will scale up the whole audio industry. This is the reason I keep saying the word ecosystem. going out of the bubble of what we are doing and actually start seeing this whole audio industry as one single entity. So there's no sound design department, no music composers department, or no developer department. It's just the audio industry working on the same thing. Hence, please start sharing ideas, and you will pretty soon like realize that there are a lot of people who are there to help you. The other question is, let's say I can connect with product managers and product makers and developers, but how do I do that? And I'm sure that as I'm talking about so many examples, one of the constant question you might have is, okay, all this sounds fun and interesting, but how do I actually connect with a developer? Especially if you are working in on a freelance basis. Like if you're working in a game audio company, you might already have developers. Maybe so far you did not take the step to connect with them or discuss with them or build ideas. Maybe after this talk you will do. But there are also situations where you might not find anybody at all because that's not your circle. And that's where there are some things that can actually help. One thing that I would recommend is conferences. So the audio developer conference, for example, happens every year, and there a lot of developers from all of the companies whose products you are using are present. So that's another great example of where you can actually find people who are exactly on the other end, who are actually waiting for you to share your ideas. Now, a lot of times what happens is creatives kind of avoid going into developer conference. But I would recommend that if you find a developer conference, whether it's ADC, whether it is GDC, or any developer conference, you will realize that you have a very important role to play there as well. Because in the developer terms and people who do like technical development, there's something called user stories. User stories is basically ideas from a user or a problem statement of a user that needs to be solved technically. And if you are in that conversation, maybe something will come out. What I've also realized is that the best ideas happen when you are in a casual conversation. For example, you will probably share some ideas and questions in the chat here. But after you're done with this chat, maybe down the line, when you are just relaxing, you will come across another thing that you wanted to ask. How do you make that happen? Again, there are have to be some ways so that people can actually collaborate, and conferences are those places to make that happen. Yeah. So one thing is, where can you have those kind of discussions, especially in the world of audio tech? So ADC is a good example. The other thing would be, what do I discuss? Like maybe you are shy and you're not sure if what you are suggesting is a good enough option. My point is, just ask anyway. Maybe you will be talking in your language of being a creative, and the developer is understanding in a different point of view, and maybe that will end up making a new thing out of like just that conversation. I'll give you some examples of what you can discuss about what the user stories can be. And if anybody is already working on it, I wouldn't be surprised, because somebody somewhere is already working on the idea that you have right now. What if there was a video player in Wise? It's a challenge to sync, for example, voice, the sound design and the visuals in the game, right? So what if there was a way that Wise can have an animation player? Just throwing it out there. Maybe this is an example of a user story. You have this idea in mind, you go to a developer in your team, and you just say it to them. It might seem very trivial. It might seem like, oh, this is like many people would have thought about it. But the answer is, not many people have tried to build a solution out of it. And whatever you build might actually get ended up using by so many people who have the same exact problem. So again, user stories are basically problem statements or ideas that you can talk about to developers. And I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to make that happen. Right. Oh, by the way, just a quick note. So the ADC this year is happening in Bristol, which is like the game audio hub, and it's also happening online. So you don't necessarily have to travel to Bristol. You can also attend it online. It will be hosted on Gather. So that way, again, you have a moment where a lot of developers would be there, and you as a creative can just share your ideas and potentially maybe make a new company. Who knows? The other thing that I would suggest as a next step is look for like-minded people locally. Yes, internet is a good place to find people, but if you can find somebody in your own company or in your own developer team, that's even better, right? So, or maybe you know that in your neighborhood there are people who are working on a specific sites type of work. For example, there are web developers or backend developers, or you came across somebody on LinkedIn who is doing a lot of AI research. just DM them, just let them know that, hey, I have some questions. Can you help me with those things? The other way that you can do is basically join some more Discord servers or make your own Discord servers. So, for example, there is one that we are running, which is called Music Tech Community, and there the idea is to bring musicians, sound designers, developers all on the same page and do hackathons. And those hackathons are not developer driven, but rather idea driven. So there's one happening, by the way, on 15th and 16th of June, which is tomorrow. Again, I'll share all of these links towards the end of the slides. And another thing that I would also like to mention is sometimes it's good to have meetups without agendas. Yes, it's a good thing to basically have a conversation with a developer, or even if you're a sound designer, you might have a conversation with a musician. But it does not always have to be about your work. Maybe it can be just about the common things that you like. Maybe you like this same favorite movie or same band or same artist. And when you're talking about those conversations, you actually might starting having a conversation about how that artist or that film has used technology, and that might spark another conversation. Again, just some ideas on what can be the next steps to discuss with like-minded folks around you. So basically, coming back to this meme again, in my opinion, collaboration helps our industry more than ranting. I'm not denying the advantages of ranting. Ranting can actually help in many ways, and it's not a negative word, by the way. Ranting, if you see by definition, it's not completely a negative thing. It completely depends on what context you are using it in. But I definitely have to, but you definitely have to remember that if you are giving a collaborative idea or you are giving a constructive criticism, that can actually make something happen in your favor rather than just ranting. So I'm really hopeful that after this talk, maybe there will be a slight change in your approach to products. Maybe next time when you come across a DAW which is crashing, maybe before you make the meme about it, maybe you will find somebody working in that company and just let them know your opinion and let them know your idea, or even lend a helping hand that, hey, I'm here to make suggestions or make beta testing for you, for example. Participate in hackathons. Just a quick check. How many of you participate in sound design challenges and game jams? Can you just like mention in the chat? So just quickly checking how many of you have recently or in the past participated either in a game jam or in a sound design challenge or anything similar. All right, some folks have done a game jam. Right, Bernardo? Yeah. You do a lot of sound design challenges as well, yes? Right. So another question that I have for you is most of the times when the game jams happen, our focus is primarily to get the audio implemented, right? A lot of times that's when we also interact with developers, and that can is also kind of an excuse to make that happen. It's a good excuse because you would actually want to do something in a time limit. So, for example, you are given just 24 hours to finish the game, and in that time, a lot of things have to happen. But my question is, have you ever done a game jam where you have focused on the audio feature more than the audio implementation? For example, maybe you did not implement sound for everything, but you just ended up making a good reverb feature, which sounds really like realistic. Has that ever been an aim at all? So basically, you have 24 hours, and the usual approach would be let's use sound design to make something better in the game, or use music to make it more immersive. But have you explored thinking of new audio feature which will make the game immersive? So you're not basically giving away your sound design, just that you are thinking about soundscape from a feature standpoint rather than actual sound standpoint. You please just say no so that I understand. Okay, this has not happened, so actually I can get to the next point. All right. So again, so I think coming back to the, it looks like I think not many people have explored that side of things. What I'm trying to say here is that, yeah, exactly. There's not enough time. That's also true. My whole point here is that a lot of times when we do get the chance to interact with developers, our focus is more or less still on the things that we are doing day in and day out. So what I would recommend is to join cross-domain hackathons. So for example, so there is, like I said, there is a hackathon happening on this weekend in the music tech community. And there the idea is to build something for music synchronization. So for example, one of the ideas that I have suggested is, let's say there is a reference track which is playing, and there are three players. One is a drum player, one is the bass guitar player, another one is a rhythm guitarist. And what the product needs to do is listen to all those three audio and just tell who is out of sync. It's basically just on that fun part of when you are performing as a band. There's always this argument that I was on time, maybe you were off sync, and so on. So just making like a cool hackathon thing out of it. But that is just one example. Why not have a hackathon where you, as a sound designer or a game audio person, collaborate with a developer just to make a feature, and that's all you are doing in that week. Maybe you're trying to make a good reverb, a good delay effect, something which is light on cpu, which does not exist on the market. So these are some examples of activities that can be done. I know that maybe you have those ideas, maybe you wanted to do this but you could not find a place to do it. One example would be the music tech community. I'll just all the links to join will be there on my slide notes towards the end of the talk, so don't worry about it. But all I'm saying is that this is not the only hackathon that's happening. There are many hackathons that happens almost every week or every month. Maybe it's time to look into that. There are a lot of hackathons happening for the last few years about music information retrieval, which is, if I give you a track, how can you split that into stems? And now you are seeing those features coming in the DOS. In Logic Pro, it was recently released. There are many plugins that can do it. But this is not a recent development. There have been work happening for many, many years now. My point is, those research were happening with people who are maybe 60% people who understood music and 40% people who were just engineers whose application area was audio. What if you were part of that conversation? Maybe you will be able to give better opinion on the results of it. You will help them tweak that product better and make things happen. So again, all of those things cannot happen if you have to go to a university, because there's a wall there. But you can join hackathons and you can actually bring those ideas to life. Again, I think I mentioned in the starting, if you don't do beta testing for a company, start doing so. I would highly recommend it. Reason 13 just I think recently opened up their beta testing thing. Ableton does a lot of beta testing as well. And every company, like as Soundly also, we give away some of our builds to beta testers just to get some opinions. And I think those are other good locations where you can actually give your ideas and suggestions and feedback. And before I conclude, I think I should talk about the one more thing. Remember, I talked about the synthesizers in the starting. The fact that it's the industry that often determines how an artist will express their ideas. Do you all remember that? Just quickly checking. Please mention it in the comments. So my exact statement there is, uh, let me just quickly check my statement just so that I don't mess it up. Yep. So it's the industry that drives the genre and the style of music as much as the artists do. And I gave you the example of Daft Punk. The reason I'm bringing that now is for the the hot topic of AI and machine learning. And if I see the results of the poll that I did earlier, only there are a few people who are not liking what AI and machine learning is doing, and there are majority of people who are liking it a little. So my question to you right now, and you can mention it in the chat, is: have any of you had any conversation with any of the companies or developers that are making tools specific to audio in the world of AI? Please take pride in saying yes or no, either way, because both of the answers have their own value. So it's nothing to feel like, oh, I have not done it, maybe I'm missing out on something, but it's good to say it loud and clear, because then the next steps become much easier. So I just quickly wait for a minute just to see in the chat box here. If the question is, have any of you explored with any of the companies that are making AI tools? Right. So my point is there are a lot of people who are liking what machine learning and AI is doing in the world of audio. Many people who are also not liking it. But my point is, imagine you are the guitarist. You are the guitarist who has to tell the guitar maker what you like, what you don't like. Otherwise, the guitar maker will keep making what they think is the right answer. If you have a concern for AI, for example, as mentioned in the chat, one person has mentioned that if you have a concern about what AI is doing or what machine learning is doing, the best way to get a solution or an answer for it is by talking to a developer, uh, suggesting your point of view, because there are very high chances that maybe we don't understand how AI works, how LLM works. But if we get to know about it, it will start to make sense. Synthesizers, when they were new, for example, maybe the creators were not aware of how things are working. They were just using it creatively. Maybe AI can have that same kind of workflow where you decide how you want to work with it. But my point is, irrespective of whether AI is good for us or bad for us or whatever the end case be, it will not work in our favor if we don't take the step to start the conversations with people who are building those tools. So my uh, again, the suggestion as the next step would be, as I mentioned in my previous slides, remember that from a company's point of view, people working in many companies are not musicians, are not creatives, and they need to hear your thoughts. So don't think that people are like just discarding things. So that's what I will end the whole thing with. If you want to make the guitar work in your favor as a guitar player, if you want more knobs on the synthesizer, if you want the product to do what you have to do, it's important to do cross collaborative discussions. It's important to think of audio industry as an audio ecosystem. It's important for us to remember that the users, the artists are one part of it. There are three or even more side of it. The audience, as it was mentioned in the chat, there is the education side of things. There is the research, which you are not aware of right now. But whatever research is happening today will convert into product in 2 years or 3 years and will reach you. But if you can catch up early with that, if you can figure out and discuss with students, discuss with universities, maybe the whole thing, the whole industry will continue to work in our favor. And when it is inclusive of all of these four elements, that's when the audio industry will grow. That's where the rants will be just for fun and not actually contain the harsh truth of reality. And that's where I'll conclude this talk for today. Thank you so much for listening. I'm going to take the questions now from the chat. Uh, I did the all the slides that I have shared here, every tool that I talked about here, every hackathon I talked about, anything that I talked about will be available on this link, prashantmishra.xyz/aircon24 by tomorrow, by 15th of June. So as of now, if you go to the website, there won't be much information, but yeah, I'll add that in the coming days. The other thing I want to mention is that this let this not be the end of this conversation. Let this not be just a talk which I'm giving and you're all listening. We need to start a conversation. I'll start with the questions right now, but my request would be that please reach out after this talk as well. Please drop me an email, share your suggestions. Let's talk and figure out ways that this can be made better. Let's figure out ways that we can connect with developers more easily. We can connect with the companies more easily, and we can connect with the researchers more easily than the way it is right now. So I'm going to quickly take some questions here. Right. So I don't see any questions so far, but feel free to just ask away anything right now as well. Okay, I'm just going to read for people who are watching this in the future as a recording. So one of the points mentioned by Alec in the chat is, I'm all for raising our voices and championing artists' need in tech. Totally makes sense to form relationships with people who are building tools. Yeah, definitely. I like completely agree with you. And I think we need to do it more often than we do right now. Yeah, thank you for listening and sharing your suggestions. Please feel free to ask any questions that you might have. We can have a discussion even on the AI side of things, on other ways of collaborating as well. So I would also mention that the previous talk that I had done last year, which was about essence of sound, one of the questions there, one of the suggestions that I had given was start audio journal. So audio journal is basically you listen to the world around you every day and you kind of make a note about it. What did you like about what you heard? What you did not like? And just to see how your taste improves over time. So I, and which is why I asked that question in today's talk, because I want to make sure that again these conversations and these presentations are not one way. It kind of helps you and also helps me understand uh, how people are taking these suggestions and what people are doing with that. So one of the questions is from Bas. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, BAS. I'm curious on your on what your thoughts are on applications of AI. Where do you see the most benefits, but also where you don't see benefits? I am only seeing the benefits right now. I'm not focusing on the other side of it right now. And in terms of benefit, what I'm realizing is that let's take an example of a voice editor, the life of a voice editor. And I have done thousands of minutes of voice editing, so I understand the pain there. One of the most like challenging thing used to be to remove noise, to remove clicks and pops. And it used to be so annoying because as a voice editor, my aim always should be to make sure that the rhythm of the voice is correct. The sound actually tonally sounds nice. For example, if there was a live recording versus something recorded in a studio, my efforts will go in making sure that those are sounding well. My effort is not to use the tool. I did not ever see my work that I am somebody who can EQ well, I'm somebody who can use the compressor nicely. That's not my end goal. I don't want to be a master user of a plugin. I want to be able to make something that the end users listens and cannot find the difference, right? That's the whole agenda there. So I see from that point of view. And with that perspective, I see a lot of use cases of AI. I see a lot of potential where something that used to take me a lot of time would take me less time. But at the end of the day, it will be always me to take that creative decision. For example, if you have to play a synthesizer like a melody very fast, either you are very good with your fingers that you can play the MIDI note very fast, or you write a tool that can actually use an ARP and you can actually automate that. So when you press a key, it does the work for you. But at the end of the day, it was me making the decision. And here is a food for thought for everyone. And I say this example in all of my talks. I will not name any DOS, but let's assume. Have you noticed that almost every DAW has a browser where you can look for loops and beats and all that? So you're all aware of that thing, right? So imagine that the DAW that you are using in the background is kind of looking into what genre of music you are making and then showing you the results in your search box. In that, so as of now what would happen is, for example, if you want a beat, you might search something like a hip hop beat, right? And you will get a lot of files as an option. You will preview them and then you will drag and drop in your project. My point here is, what if those suggestions are not just based on your keyword but also based on the genre of music you are making? Maybe there's a machine learning algorithm running in the background which is seeing the sonic texture of your music and it is giving you the best possible results. It's not happening right now. This is all hypothesis. But I'm giving you an example. Now, as an artist, you are still the one who is listening to different options and then making the creative choice. So, did the machine learning take over your work or did it make your work easier? Because even in the past, when you were searching for files using text, even then there was the machine helping you find the sounds, right? And the coincidence of you stumbling upon a sound is what makes it art. You never know which synthesizer preset will work in your favor. You're just randomly just looking through all of them, and all of a sudden you stumble upon something that sounds really, really good, and you save it for someday. And then someday happens, and then you actually make use of it. So you might actually are kind of the machine is kind of helping you already. It's just that you're not aware of it. Let me give you another example. If you use any voice editing tool which can remove declick and all that, it's still using machine learning in the background. But just because it's you who is clicking on the module, selecting the audio, and clicking render, you are thinking that it's you who has made the creative choice. If you take it one step forward, maybe you click a button and the whole audio gets cleaned up. So how is it not a better thing for an artist than somebody else? So I'm just giving you a few examples of where AI and machine learning can actually play a good role. Believe it or not, even if you think that this is not working in your favor, we are all used to this for years. Every tool that we use in some way influences our creative choices. We can always say that no, it was me who had complete control on it, but that's not really true. It always depends on the search results and a lot of other things. I do see some questions, like some thoughts around that. As a composer, I would, for example, one of the notes from the chat is, as a composer, I absolutely would not want that. Yeah, I think so. It's as of now, it's not available in DOS where it can listen to what kind of music you're making and give you suggestions. But my point is that even if that's not a feature right now, and if it is a feature in the future, you will figure out a way to make some things work in your favor. Again, I think whatever I am saying is slightly more towards the optimistic side of things. And I myself also have other questions around it as well, other concerns around it as well. All I'm saying is that, at least in the context of this talk, we need to have conversations with people who are making the AI. If this is something that we don't want, for example, as a composer, maybe we let the AI person know what exactly do we want so that they actually put their effort there, right? So maybe that would be something that works in our favor rather than having a tool which actually is just going against what we actually wanted. Does that point make sense? Yeah, I'm happy to take some more questions. I'll just quickly check if you all have put your questions in the pinned comment there. All right. So again, I think just to summarize all of this, the solution kind of is in our hands, is what I'm trying to say. So far, we have not been involved in that process, right? And it's partly the fault of the industry that's building it as well. So I'm not completely saying it's the users who did not take the initiative. But my point is, maybe this is the time, this is the right time when we do that. If we come across, say, a LinkedIn post or a Instagram reel where AI is used, and that post is from the creator of that tool, you ask them their email ID, you ask them your concerns, you tell them, can I be involved in that process? Can I tell you my point of view? Or can you help me understand better how can I use this tool in a way that is actually helping me and not going against me. Again, this talk is completely about the ecosystem. We need to start seeing the whole bigger picture. Is the audio industry that will grow further with all of these conversations, and it's better to have the conversation than to rant. Again, just as a conclusion to that. Exactly. So I think one of the suggestions from the chat again is telling them what might not work will also save them tons of time in development. Exactly. Thanks for elaborating. I agree that it can be very interesting as a tool, but to replace the creator completely is, in my eyes, undesirable. Again, so Bess, I don't think the creator will be replaced at all. It is always the person with the creative choice who will be always the final decision maker. I'm guessing your question was slightly related to the generative AI, which actually builds something for you. But at the end of the day, you will notice that even in the visual world, the people who do digital art are also finding this much more helpful in their own subtle way. Because I don't think the AI is giving you anything which is completely exactly what you want. It's always giving you bits and pieces of it. And just like how the DAWs allowed us to do stuff in our laptops, for which you used to use like cables and hardware some 20 years ago, the same way the creatives will be able to figure out a solution. This is the optimistic answer towards it. My another point that I will again add in the context of this talk is that if we have conversations, that will be a lot in our favor. All right, I think with that, I will give you all some breathing time for the next talk. And I'll also try and join that. I hope this conversation made sense. Please feel free to email me again about your thoughts. I don't want this to be just a talk where I am sharing my opinions or my experience around it. And I'm happy to get on a call as well. I use Calendly, by the way. So if you want to schedule an actual one-on-one call, my weekends, my weekdays are all free and available after my working hours. So just use the Calendly link, and I'll be happy to have a deeper conversation on it. Thank you again, everyone, for taking the time to join in this hopefully useful talk. And all the best with whatever you're doing in your lives. All right, bye, everyone.